Hello, hello. Andrew Gade here, changing up the conversation. I have no timer today, so hopefully I don't run over time. I'm just realizing all this funny conversation. So hopefully my producer here is going to help me out on the timing. So we'll find out how that works out here. So, anyways, guys, yes, back here changing the conversation up. So much has happened just the past week. Yes, I mean all this fun, exciting stuff, right? I think where do we start? Where do we end? Well, just give you a little hint. It never ends. Yes. So where are we gonna start today? Well, you know what? We've mentioned Nancy Pelosi before. We've also mentioned her troublemaker husband. Yes, the guy that likes to drink and drive. Yes. So I think that maybe he brought home one of these drunk guys from the bar and maybe gotten some scuffle with him. Of course, we haven't figured this out yet. They're still doing investigation. But supposedly, Paul Pelosi got attacked by some intruder. And again, like I said, I think he actually invited him in because supposedly he was asking for Nancy. Yeah, and so because of this whole big mess now, they're calling for more security for our government and officials and elected officials. I think it's time just to lay them off. Maybe they're not really essential. So maybe that's something to consider. They will save us a lot of time and trouble here. They're so old anyways. I mean, they're about to die off. So should we just let them all die off and then that's the end of it? Or can we just determine them to no longer be valid or relevant? Because it seems like all they do is cause problems and get in the news and nothing really gets done here. So just a suggestion. And then something I heard that was a little, how should I say here? Interesting. It was from a few teacher friends of mine. But now I guess in California, in middle and high schools, they have tampon and pad dispensers in all the boys' bathrooms. So, and supposedly the last time I heard they were like all emptied out. So I don't know where it's going, where all these tampons are going in boys' restrooms. Maybe they're taking them and reselling them. I don't know. Maybe that's a new side hustle. It's the thing going on here. But yeah, anyways, we don't need to get into that too much, but it doesn't really make sense to me. I mean, maybe they're just stuffing them in the toilets and they're going to clog toilets with them. Maybe they're getting in fights and they're going to use them to, put them in their nose to stop a bleeding nose. I don't know. I mean, there's more than one use for a tampon, I guess. So that's where our tax money's going, guys, in California. Yes, tampon machines in boys' restroom facilities. And there was another study that came out here. I like this study. This study contradicted the lockdown rule during the whole C word pandemic. Yes, I guess at various times during the pandemic, of course, people were advised to stay at home and limit their outdoor exercise, which I had said was, not cool, also illegal, violated our constitutional rights, and was counterproductive because if you want people to be healthy, they need to be outside and they need to get exercise. So, of course, but that was against the rules because we thought COVID was everywhere and it's airborne and we're all going to get infected, we're all going to die, and it never happened. So, of course, I guess what they said here was, now we know what we know, which is true. We would encourage people to exercise. So this is a whole new thing. Now they're encouraging us to exercise. We've always understood that physical activity has a protective effect against non-communicable diseases, but now we know we can protect against viral infection. So exercise also can help protect against viral infection. Wow, this might have something to do with this thing called the immune system. I mean, I don't know. We had them before, now we still have them, I guess. But really, I mean, at the end of the day, who really benefited from all the lockdowns, right? I mean, the government benefited because they determined themselves to be essential. And they also got to pick and choose what businesses were considered essential and non-essential. Now, most of those essential businesses were all large corporations. Yeah, of course. So they also benefited as well. So, and who was hurt? Because there's always two sides to everything. Well, who was hurt was mostly small businesses. I mean, we lost probably tens of thousands of small businesses. I have no idea what the number is. But they're the ones who suffered because most of them were determined to be non-essential. See, that's the problem. Government's not essential. They're not at all. We don't need government. We need certain types of services, but those don't have to be in the current structures that we have. And this idea of how we think about government doesn't have to be the way it is. I mean, yes, we need police officers and firefighters, but they're not government. No, it's all those other people that get paychecks that sit around and do nothing and cause problems and have their husbands invite intruders home from the bar to beat up their wives or beat themselves up when they're not happy about it. That's what happens with those politicians, yes. And then, of course, on the radio, I'm hearing the California Department of Health is still advertising for the pharmaceutical companies. So recommending, of course, getting vaccines and boosters and all that. Hey, that's great if you want to get your vaccine, your boosters. But why is the California Department of Health advertising for these corporations, these independent companies? This should be something that if Pfizer wants to advertise their vaccine, advertise all you want, but on your dollar. Why is this taxpayer dollars? Why is this taxpayer money? Remember, California is seeing a big drop in revenues, and they're actually anticipating, I think, another like an $8 billion deficit here just next fiscal year. So now we have an issue where 1 year we're flush with money, we're handing it out to everybody, we're giving all these bonuses out to all these non-working people, and then of course, next thing you know, a year later comes by, and guess what? We're broke. Sounds like a California thing to me. So, and then of course, our great governor, Gavin Newsom. How can we leave this guy alone? He now is supporting, this is what I thought was kind of interesting, caught my eye, that's why I'm mentioning it today, but he's endorsing San Diego's controversial Measure D that's going to be on our ballot, it is on our ballot, here for the November 8th election, which could lift the city's ban on union-friendly project labor agreements. It's a rare step, they're saying, for a governor to take a side on a municipal ballot measure. Which I thought was kind of rare too. So this actually has to do with project labor agreements. In San Diego back in 2012, we'd actually outlawed project labor agreements, but I guess there was some carve out for it which helped San Diego, saying pretty much that if it's state funded or if their funds are coming from the state, that it's not going to be affected by the PLAs. So the carve out pretty much has helped San Diego receive state construction funds. But besides two state laws, and I knew there was something going on here, but I know there's two state laws, SB 922 and SB 829, that make cities with laws prohibiting PLAs ineligible for discretionary state construction funds. So the state is trying to force every city into allowing only construction with PLAs, project labor agreements, which means that the California state is trying to mandate that everything done in the state is done only with unions. So, I mean, that kind of sounds like racketeering. It sounds like the unions are the ones, the unions are the ones that are putting up the majority of the money to elect local officials and state officials. And then, of course, they are repaying their dues to who elected them by making sure the unions get all the work. So that's racketeering, yes, and that's also against the law. And we should be holding these criminals, we should be holding them accountable for the laws that they break. So that's why I think we should use the RICO Act and go after these corrupt California politicians and these corrupt unions for stealing all their hardworking union fees and dues and using them on elections. So just throwing it out there, just a little idea of mine. And then of course there was good old House Democrats. You know, Democrats back here, I think it's about last week or so. There was a President Biden, I guess, wanted to encourage direct diplomatic talks with Russia over, of course, the Ukraine ceasefire. And I guess there was an abrupt retreat from an exposed Democratic divisions in the first Republicans to dissent in Congress over the war. I guess there was a letter that came out of Congress signed by a good amount of Democrats that wanted to urge the president for a ceasefire. And then the next day they retracted the letter saying, no, we didn't want that to come out. But this letter was actually written and signed months ago. So it's interesting to see what's going on here. So it's like, okay, so are you guys still for the war or are you not for the war? Because you're still designating and giving all this money and all these resources to Ukraine. And at the same time, you're going to sit here and say, well, we're not for it. So then stop supporting them. And if this was months ago, then it sounds like maybe we shouldn't have got involved in Ukraine at all. Because this situation in Ukraine is escalating. I mean, it's escalating, and there's a possibility, a strong possibility, that it's going to start spilling over. It seems like it already is. I mean, I find it interesting that we're okay with the government pretty much being behind blowing up the Nord Stream gas lines between Russia and Germany. I mean, that equates pretty much, us to a terrorist group, right? So America's acting as a terrorist type situation. The European Union, I don't know why they're not calling out America for this blatant act. I mean, we're cutting off their supply of natural gas, and we know why. Because we've already signed contracts with Germany and with Europe to sell them our natural gas, our liquid natural gas. So it's the LNG. So, we're extracting all of our resources from America, and we're selling them to South America, we're selling them to Europe and all this stuff. So of course we're the ones that are going to profit for this. But why is Europe okay with their citizens suffering is what I want to know. And how are Americans okay with us being a sponsor of a terrorist state, in essence, our own country? And then of course Russia is not very happy about with what's going on here. So Russia announced here, I guess just this last weekend, that it's going to immediately suspend its implementation of a UN brokered grain deal. It's seen more than 9 million tons of grain exported from Ukraine during the war. It's helped bring down soaring global food prices. Ukraine accused Russia of creating a world Hunger Games. So yeah, there you go. So now Hunger Games, I guess, is real life. It's no longer just a movie. Russia announced that it would immediately halt participation in this grain deal. It's alleging that Ukraine staged a drone attack this last weekend against Russia's Black Sea Fleet off the coast of occupied Crimea. Ukraine has said in an issue, and I read this, said Ukraine has denied the attack, saying that Russia mishandled its own weapons. And then I saw another article that pretty much actually had Ukraine bragging about it and showing video footage of its own drones, airborne drones and water drones, going after these Russian, war assets. So in essence, Ukraine is blatantly lying. So this is another blatant lie in the news. The information that we're seeing in a lot of the media, Western, quote unquote, Western media, a lot of it is false. It's been changed, it's been modified, and we can't trust it. So we can't trust the information our own government's giving us. We can't trust the information Ukraine's giving us. Again, these are just adding to more reasons why we need to get out of this conflict with Ukraine. It makes no sense. We shouldn't be over there, and we shouldn't be in other people's business. And more importantly, we need to make sure that this does not escalate and start spilling outside into a larger situation. And then, of course, China's going to get involved. Next thing you know, it's Russia, China versus America, World War III, yada, yada. And that's not good. We do not want this. Why does why we love war so much? Well, the only thing I can think of here is because we have such a large military industrial complex. We love spending money, weapons and guns and military because we'd hate to spend it on our own citizens. Maybe like on healthcare and housing. Just a few ideas, guys. We're running out of time on this short. Take a short break. Catch you on the flip side. I just realized that. Alrighty, yes, Andrew, Mr. Gade. Yes, I'm back. Yeah. So, and before a little break right there, the blame game and all we call it fake news. I don't know. Is that a term that's still valid? Fake news, or is that we don't like that term anymore? But again, Russia's not very happy. So they're actually seeing today. That today's Monday, but you're here as a Saturday. So anyway, so this last week, whatever, Russia was blowing up more of Ukrainians' power and water infrastructure. So they're pretty much going to just continue to destroy Ukraine and their ability to service their residents. I mean, that's kind of the thing. It's like, hey, if you guys attack us and you attack anything on Russian soil or any of our military stuff, then we're going to attack you guys back. Ukraine's going to lose. They can't win. So who suffers? Ukrainians. Ukrainians are going to suffer. They're going to continue to suffer until what? Until we finally decide that it's time to say, all right, Russia, fine. Let's sit down and broker a deal. That's what we should have done since day one. Okay? We're coming all... Now, so what do we see from all this? We see all of Ukraine, most of Ukraine destroyed. We see tens of thousands, maybe into the hundreds of thousands of people now been killed by this, mostly military, innocent people, men and women who are trying to fight because they're getting paid to, and no one ends up winning. So what, a couple years later, down here in the future, we're going to sit down and be like, all right, fine. All right, Russia, how can we work this out? You see, that's the problem we have. That's the problem with fighting. No one wins, everyone loses until we finally get to the point where like, oh, you know what, maybe we should sit down and try to make a deal. There we go. And good old North Korea, right? Like, what's up with North Korea? So I guess they've been firing all these missiles because they're testing out all their stuff, right? So they fired a few more ballistic weapons here in the last few weeks. And the U.S. military warned North Korea, they said this, that the use of nuclear weapons, quote unquote, will result in the end of that regime. So we're pretty much telling North Korea, if they keep firing missiles, that we're going to, I guess we're going to just blow up their whole country or end the regime. That sounds like another fight that we want to pick with North Korea. I don't know. I thought that we had that fight a long time ago. I thought that's why they kind of drew a line there in the middle and put the North Korea and the South Korea. It's like, hey, you guys stay up there. We don't like you, and the South Koreans we're gonna be friendly with. Again, I don't know, but it sounds like another situation that we're trying to get involved in here. Which again, why are we getting involved in other countries' world affairs? We shouldn't even have bases in South Korea. If North Korea wants to take over South Korea, go for it, North Korea. I don't care. I don't. And most Americans would probably say that if they put a list together of all their worries about America, that North Korea and South Korea would probably be pretty far down the list. Yes. So anyways, pull all of our troops out of there, and maybe we can have our troops, our men and women of the military, work on helping build infrastructure. They can compete with other contractors. Maybe government-funded money from Biden's $2 trillion infrastructure plan. We have men and women in the military that can help use this money to build infrastructure because we know there's a shortage of people that want to work. There's an idea, guys. Just throwing it out there. And speaking of people working, and maybe the opposite of working, but I guess the number of people falling into homelessness is for the first time is outpacing the number of homeless people who find housing in San Diego County each month. So there's more people becoming homeless than there's homes to put them in, which is interesting because we have a lack of housing anyways. It's not really that surprising. But again, if we're having more and more people falling into homelessness, that obviously says there's a problem here. There's going to be a problem when it comes to work, incentive, housing, affordability, a lot of factors involved here. Of course, this doesn't get into that. But again, that's just not a good sign. I guess it's saying that now for every 10 homeless people who found housing over the past 12 months, 13 more people became homeless for the first time. So this mainly is a housing issue right here. And speaking of housing issues, I mean, we have real estate investors. I guess this is nationwide. They bought 18% of all single family homes in the U.S. in the fourth quarter of 2021. So that's the fourth quarter of 2021. But again, 18%, that's a pretty high percentage. So almost a fifth of every house that was bought in the country was bought by investors. Okay, so that means they're not being bought by new homeowners, by younger people, or by anyone else. They're bought by investors, meaning that they may not ever be able to be bought again and may only be able to be rented. So that's going to again take away, remember, it's going to take away the people's ability of being able to build wealth and have a home. So, I mean, and this also is going to be, to people in society to be able to have a home. I mean, they're shut out of, they call it upward mobility, right? So then if you can't get yourself into a home to begin with, you can't maybe build some equity in that. Maybe you want to start a family in the future, you want to buy a larger home. That is going to pretty much end the process. This has been going on now for a long time. So our system's broken, and more importantly, I have a problem with us allowing these corporations and these investors to be owning property. Again, I would want to approach that before we jump into foreign-owned properties. I mean, foreigners that live here and occupy them, I'd say, okay, if you guys are contributing and you live here, that's okay. But again, if you own things and you own them as an investment, this and that, then I'd say it's not okay. So maybe that's something we have to start looking into, is actually restarting and saying, unfortunately, the investors that own property, your investment went bad. We're going to take these properties and we're going to have to put them back on the market, or we're going to have to use some sort of localized system to be able to give younger people and new homeowners an opportunity of being able to buy these, lease to own, rent to own. Again, that's the only way we're going to solve this. We've dug ourselves in a big ditch, guys, and there's no way we're going to solve it in our current system and our current structure. I can tell you that right now. It's only going to get worse. And when people can't buy a home, they can't build wealth, where's the motivation? Again, like the previous study said, more people are falling into homelessness. 13 out of 10 people, there's 13 becoming homeless for 10 homes opening up. So this trend is not good. It's going in the wrong direction. We need to take some drastic changes and new approaches to this issue here. And then, of course, good old workers. I guess there was some survey by Cisco. They surveyed almost 30,000 full-time employees around the globe. 78% of the respondents said that remote and hybrid work improved their overall well-being. 79% of respondents said that working remotely improved their work-life balance. Well, of course, if you're not having to go into work as much, you're able to enjoy life. But again, I think I mentioned this on a previous show, all the less hours that people are wasting driving and commuting. That's extra time that they can have to spend with their friends or family, time spending not working. And of course, that can improve their well-being, and then that helps improve their work-life balance. So that makes sense to me. At the same time, why are people having to drive and commute to go to an office to sit behind a computer in a little cubicle and then knock out their work and then drive all the way home in traffic when they could do that at home? If some people want to be able to come to work, cool. If they want to work from home, as long as they get their work done, that's all I care about. Exactly. So that the people should have options. Everyone's a little bit different. And I think that that's one thing that came out of COVID that was a positive thing, was the fact that we actually started looking at certain things saying, wait a second, maybe we don't have to have everyone do the same thing if it doesn't make sense. So there you go. And speaking of making sense, I know it's coming up here, I think in just another week. We've got good old daylight savings. So daylight savings time is going to be ending, so we have to turn our clocks back. Because remember, we voted to stop changing the clocks, but that's going to be tied up in the government for the rest of our lives. But I guess Mexico, good old Mexico, a favorite country here. Their Senate voted last week to end daylight savings time for most of the country. Okay, this is kind of interesting here. For most of the country, the area along the U.S. border would not be affected by the measure and would continue to change its clocks twice a year. The rest of Mexico, however, would change its clocks for the last time here this next week if the bill is signed into law. And it's saying here, quote unquote, this new law seeks to guarantee the human right to health and increase safety in the mornings, procure the well-being and productivity of the population, and contribute to saving electric energy. So that's what the Mexican Senate said. So I like how this meant human right to health and saving electric energy. So I guess Mexico prefers it being light in the morning, which I kind of do too. They're also hard workers, right? And everyone knows that if the earlier you start work, the sooner work gets done. So if the sun comes up earlier, you start working earlier, and then you have more time in the afternoon and evening to drink cerveza. I agree with the Mexican model personally. I like it. Unless I'm on vacation there, and then I don't really do much work, and I kind of drink more cerveza. But anyways, so maybe we can follow that model, or maybe we'll do the opposite of Mexico. Maybe we'll decide to be on the spring forward time, just because we don't want to copy anyone, because Mexico's too cool for that. And then, of course, good old Elon Musk. This whole Twitter debacle. Well, guess what? The debacle's over. Now he is, quote unquote, Chief Twit. That's what he labels himself now. Yeah, because he's the chief of Twitter. So he shortened it to Chief Twit. Kind of sounds, I don't know. Hey, what's up, Twit? I don't know. But anyways, he's the Chief Twit. So I guess started clearing house. He's already let a bunch of top executives go. And I guess this is supposed to help a lot of people that are concerned about what's going to end up being on Twitter, because everyone's like, oh my gosh, they're freaking out. Now that Elon Musk owns it, there's not going to be any censoring. So he said that he's going to be forming a content moderation council with widely diverse viewpoints, and that no major content decisions or account reinstatements will happen before that council convenes. Now, I've already seen some stuff about how there are things on Twitter that are going maybe a little unchecked. Good. If people don't like something, then don't read it. Aren't we all adults? Why does it matter what someone says? Oh my gosh, I take so much offense to this. Why does it matter? Words don't matter. Remember, did your parents not teach you guys? Sticks and stones break your bones, but words will never hurt you. So why are they hurting you so much? Grow up. If you don't like Twitter or what's on there, then get off of it. Put down your phone, your laptop, your iPad. Go outside. Throw around some rocks and sticks. Play with your kids. Talk to somebody. Interact with other humans. Or maybe, don't do this. But don't go lock yourself in a room and take a bunch of opioids. Because remember how those opioids that are being sold by these pharmaceutical companies? Well, I guess San Diego is going to be getting $100 million in settlements from the drug manufacturers. And they're going to be wasting it on who knows what kind of programs. So remember, who benefits when all these people suffer from all these drugs that our pharmaceutical companies are making money off of? The local governments, they're the ones that actually are the ones that benefit from it. I like this one though. There's a new law coming into effect here. It's called the freedom to walk. Jaywalking will no longer be illegal in California, guys. So we can start jaywalking it up all we want. No more $250 fine. Okay, so there we go. And then lastly here, the transition to electric vehicles. Good old California. Suppose there's an issue here. If you rent a house, you're a renter, or you rent a condo, or you rent an apartment, and you don't have a system, where are you going to plug your cars into? So where are all these renters and all these people going to plug their cars into? Because remember, California passed a new law where there's 0 parking requirements for new construction. So no parking spots. Where we charge our cars. Anyways, we ran out of time as always, guys. Change the conversation. Andrew here. Love you guys. Catch you next week.